Good morning, everybody. This 3 days, we try to move more deeply into the whole area of the beloved. And beloved is a very beautiful word when you look at it. To be loved. And so often we have inside this deep, deep longing of being loved. And in order to be loved, what we try is to find objects we can trust, objects we can open up to. These outer objects can be a person or a dog. Dogs are quite unconditional in their love. An animal, a plant. There's people who have this deep, loving relationship with plants, nature. And we have a tendency to open ourselves up to this object and to feel loved. So opening to the beloved is what we tend to do is to move a little bit beyond that. Beyond the subject object in the area of love. To move into a more unconditional area. Because if there is a subject-object in love, there's always conditions. Conditions we place upon ourselves, conditions we place on the object. When we kind of move more deeply into the whole area of the beloved, it moves more into the unconditional. Into the whole area where, time and space are not that important. To move more into areas of eternity and infinity. So today, what we like to kind of use as an entrance to move to the depth is this deep feeling of longing we have. This longing to belong. That's another B word in English. Erbij horen. Deel uitmaken van. To be part of. So this longing to be longing, so much is also connected with being part of unity. To move beyond the separation we experience between us and ourselves, between us and the world around ourselves. And the beautiful thing is, when we are able to move beyond this separation, we automatically move into the beloved.
So we had a few days when we were moving around different cities, airports, contexts, family. And when you look at people anywhere, in any context, you can look at them from the perspective of what's happening, what's driving the people, what do they want, what are they looking for? What are they looking for, not just in terms of what in the mind would be, I want to get this, or I want to buy this, or I would need to get on this plane, but what are they longing for? What are they searching for? What are they striving for in millions of different ways? Whether it's at a coffee morning or at a movie, there's a searching happening, almost a drive. Also in suffering, when people feel very rejected or alone, when they feel loneliness or they feel fear or are going through pain, this is also deeply connected to this search, to this longing, to something's missing. There's an almost inseparable connection between healing and this longing. So also why we're here in such a workshop is also from this kind of longing. Longing to find something because something is not complete inside. Longing for a completion or a wholeness. And to somehow find maybe the missing piece to ourselves outside here. It's quite valuable to recognize how collective this is. It's not our private little problem. We're all in this together. It's almost one longing. Even a child with the most perfect parents and the most perfect incarnation, the most perfect babyhood, has experienced the loss of a certain dimension and the arrival in a new dimension. On one level, the manifestation of the physical around itself. It has a body. And with this body comes a longing. Maybe in its purest form, it's the longing around evolution. Maybe it is evolution. Because we're on the level of form as humanity, there is here on this planet, there is an evolution happening. And there's a drive behind that. But part of that evolution is the evolution of our minds and our thinking processes. And our minds right now, the way our thoughts are programmed is in the belief that the completion is out here. It's in the other. It's in the partner. It's in the next car or the higher job, or almost unconsciously, like a reflex. The longing goes like this, grasp, take it in. I'm still not complete. Grasp again, take it in. In this endless search for completion through grasping. Now, if you look at things, atmospheres, like the feeling of belonging, or the feeling of the beloved, the feeling of unity, the feeling of peace, these subtle, these experiences from the more subtle, non-physical dimensions, none of them can be grasped. None of them can be held. You can have an experience of love, but if we hold on to it, if we hold on to the experience, or we hold on to the memory, or we hold on to the one that created that experience, or the beach where this feeling came, and we go back to the same beach with the same one, it's not there. You know? We lose it. The moment we grasp, and that also has a very particular feeling, this feeling of grasp, even before it has a form. Like this feeling of going outside to grasp. It's got a very particular energetic feeling where we throw ourselves away in a way, and where we lose, where we create the incompletion. So love can't be grasped. It's never an outward or an active movement. It's always an effect of letting go, of receptivity, of not grasping, of not controlling, of not trying to keep or to hold or to have. It's, in a way, it's really logical, because the feeling of trying to hold on to isn't very loving at all. The feeling of love is loving. The feeling of trying to keep and to hold and to control is a totally different feeling. Of course the love is lost. It's not lost, but it's complicated, hidden, frozen. In the area of needing to belong, this gets a little bit more complicated, because belonging sounds like being held. It sounds like being part of something in a way that it's safe. Like belonging to a particular tribe. Like you need to be able to trust it. Very early on in the family structure, there's the introduction of a condition. You can belong because it's your family. And so that early experience of belonging because it's my family, my mother, my house, my this, very, very early experience of that is already doing a kind of damage to belonging. Because at the same time, it's because it's my mummy and my daddy and my house. It's also because it's not the neighbour's mummy and not the neighbour's daddy and not somebody else's house. There's a split happening in belonging, which means that at the very basis, belonging, but the feeling of belonging becomes conditioned very small, very local to the family unit. Then, the way we tend to educate our children, the messages we give our babies, is in many ways conditioned by rejection. If you wet the bed, then they will laugh at you. Or if you eat with your mouth open, then you won't be part of If you don't do the manners at the table, you won't sit at the table. I'm not saying a good method, I'm saying the effect of the method that's often used. If you do this, then you're a good girl. As if the child wasn't good before that. They have to do something to be good. It's this kind of programming which suggests that it's not a given to belong. In a way that the given is a rejection, a situation of rejection or exclusion, and you have to earn your right to be part of something, anything. It's quite a desperate position at the basis of us.
It's really amazing. I kind of spiraled back a little bit to this belonging and how this belonging, which is absolutely, when you look into it, natural. There is in the basis no question about, do we belong here? We are here. If you are in a forest and you see a little plant growing in the forest, you look at the plant and you say, does this plant belong here? It grows there. It is there. It's part of nature, and even if it's, taken by a sailor from Australia, at that moment it belongs there. We make in our minds the distinction. It's part of. The moment we are here, we belong here. We are part of. Inseparable. And I say this inseparable because we separate ourselves from our minds. But we are so much more dependent on the whole as we often can realize through our minds. Influenced by the whole as this little plant in the forest is communicating and influenced and part of the whole forest. So we are part of humanity. We are part of this planet. We are made from this planet, and we will return to this planet. We are part of the build-up of this planet, of the laws which are moving through this planet according to the life which is on this planet. Which means that we are also ruled by instincts. That the body has its own language. That the language of my body, the biochemistry of my body, is influencing directly the biochemistry of the bodies around me. That we're influenced by the biochemistry of our food. The biochemistry of a certain area. All of this has an influence. And a collective influence. So in a way, I don't want to go too deeply into it, but on the whole level of interbeing, we're all dependent on each other. So when we look into this belonging and we turn it around, longing to be again. This longing to be, this longing to belong, to be part of, in a way is artificial. There has not been a moment in your life that you were not part of. Part of the system of life on this planet. Part of this planet. Part of humanity. It's a belief. It's an idea. It's something from the mind. It's something which we create as a separation. It's like when you go into this forest and you look at this little plant and you say, okay, you don't belong here. The plant doesn't realize that. The plant is absolutely belonging there, growing there, being part of nature at that moment. There's no question for this plant if it belongs there or not. It is there. But it's our mind, from our beliefs in how we organize things, and especially how we want things to stay for things to stay the same. To hold on to structures and how things should be, not how it is. Through which we separate. We separate inside ourselves, we separate ourselves from the world around. This is how it should be. This is how I should be. This is what I should be. And when I kind of move into what I should be, then I will belong. Or if my environment is changed in a way in how it should be, then I can belong. It's conditions. What's very important is to see that there is an incredible drive, kind of, to change yourself, to do it different, to adjust yourself, to adjust your environment, to adjust others, to control others. And again, this drive is moving forward from a very deep longing. Something is wrong. We realize at a certain moment that something is wrong. Something is wrong. Something is lost. Something is missing. And there is this deep longing for this something which is missing. We don't even know really what is missing, but there is a longing there. And because something is wrong, we start to divide. I make a shortcut, but because something is wrong, we start to look outside what is wrong, what is missing. And we start to look inside what is wrong, what's missing. So if something is wrong, it has to be different. So we have to be different. This is a very, very basic language we try to explain it in, because on a very, very basic young age, there is this kind of realization in which we start to search for something which is missing to make it good. Such a drive to make it good, to make it okay. So today, what we want to work with is this very basic longing. This basic longing is quite a strong force. And normally, what we do with longing is that we look at longing, and then longing immediately is kind of changed over into missing. And missing is painful. Missing is very painful because you never know if what you miss will come. Missing is different from longing. Missing means it's not there. I miss it. It's not there. Where is it? So if we allow longing, there is a very little missing. If we have a difficulty to allow longing, there is a lot of missing. There is something magical around longing. If we can allow longing, longing has the tendency, and this is not always what we want. It's something else is what we need. But when we really can allow longing, longing has a tendency to fulfill itself. In itself. That doesn't mean if you really long for something and you allow the longing, it's still missing. But to need to grab it, the need to have it, is much less. Even if it's still not there. There is a fulfillment in allowing longing by itself.
Can you say that the longing is coming from a unity?
Longing is coming from, you could say, from a level of unity, and it's kind of leading by itself if we just allow it back to a level of unity.
But then is longing expansion?
A longing, if we allow it, can create a lot of expansion.
In another way, if you take out the things, longing for something, and you just stay with the longing, then in its feeling, and at first it can be hard because it can be a lot of victim around longing and a lot of kind of difficult structures of anti-ego, in a way. Same as ego, but the negative side of ego. But if you really, really can allow the longing without filling it with an object, with a Christmas bag, then it can look like a yearning, like a tree yearning for the light. And the yearning can, in its more greater refinement, looks like prayer. Just to take the stigma off the longing. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us that we feel longing. It's a most natural thing. So prayer, in its depth, is very much this circulation of surrendering up to heaven, and what's needed comes back within a unity. But it's moving through the first layers of creation. So in a way, everything comes out of unity. But when we're talking about being and beloved and belonging, we're talking about a level of unity which is not an end point. The big being. There's also the big anger. There's also the big jealousy. There's the big being, which is a very, very pure one soul. Also, there's the big belonging, where there's not a separation between individuals. Another way to look at the word belonging, be means together. All the be words, like belief and all of this, is about togetherness. So it's being in longing together, sharing the longing. Meaning it's not a private longing for the private self anymore. It's the longing, which moves through us. We make it private. This is where the mental level comes in. And we say, because the longing can be so uncontainable, we say it's because I need a car, or it's because I need a spouse, or it's because I need chocolate. We do that. We introduce the I, the separate I. And from the level of the mind, it's always, the mind is incomplete. The mind is a reflector of being, so the mind in itself, it's always missing, it's always lacking. From the mental level, it's never going to be enough, it's a bottomless pit. Another thought, and another thought, and another thought, and another belief, and another experience. It's never going to fill that gap on the level of the mind. Only on the level of being we can release the not belonging, which is separation. Separation is not belonging, ultimately. Having a separate self, being a separate person. The moment we're a separate person, we can be better or we can be worse. We can have more and we can have less. We can be condemned and we can be redeemed. It's a torture to be separate. The mind can live with it if we're at peace with it, but if we don't take the mind too serious on a level of being, to try and force separation is a kind of self-destruction in naturalness. And what's interesting to look at is why we do that. Why we need to do that. Why we need to, not how it was done to us, but why we keep doing it. Why we can have an experience of pure being where we're not separate being, it's like a big being. And then we separate again. I'm not telling or giving any answers, but it's worth looking inside to see what is going on there. What's the dynamic? Why do we do that? Maybe it's needed for something. Maybe it's part of a dance, which is okay as long as we're not believing we are the dance. I don't know. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's because the pain of rejection is just too much. Or the fear of rejection even before the pain, so something shuts down before it even happens. One thing's for sure, the experience of belonging without conditions, belonging here, and not just in the human zone, but in the planetary zone, is utterly natural, recognizable when it comes, familiar and fulfilling. There's no lack anymore. Just as the experience of the private love becoming part at one with the beloved is the most known thing to us. So somewhere in the mind it's recognized as well, from a very deep layer.
Yeah, even in a form that the moment you move back into that, and I say move back into that, it was always there.
Yeah.
It's never been lacking. It's not something we create or what through ambitions we can kind of move into or we can create. it's not something new. The moment you move back into it, you realize it's always there.
Are there two kinds of longings? I'm not sure about that. Ik zeg het even liever in Nederlands. Dat je als mens iets ervaart en op grond van die ervaring ontstaat verlangen. Maar is er ook dat je van nature al met dat verlangen geboren wordt? Om te zoeken naar die wereld, achter alle werelden. Ik weet niet of het, misschien is het wel hetzelfde, weet ik niet, maar...
The question is, are you born already with a certain longing to search for the worlds behind the worlds, or is it? Are there two different kinds of longing? The
other one is born out of an experience you have.
Yeah, or is longing born out of an experience of separation? In this case, what we're talking about.
Maybe two longings.
And
yes, okay. Yeah.
You're also born into the longing.
Yeah.
And the longing, at a certain layer, in its feeling, actually feels like love. So it comes together with the love in a way.
And it's also something about dancing with beauty, I think.
Yeah, it's also part of it. Another B word.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's beauty is the perception through being, and the breakdown of the otherness.
Yeah.
In no subject-object beauty. You kind of melt in beauty. When you see beauty, you become one with what you see. You don't exist anymore. It's not like you look at a beautiful woman and you say, "Oh, how's my hair?" You know, well, most of the time.
So, I think the last few words, and then we will slowly move into meditation. Have a little break in the meditation. Is that okay?
Can I give the last few words before?
Yeah, you can give the last few words.
Just to recap something.
Because I give the last few words.
It's just one paradox which I think it's important to mention now, because it probably will come forward, which is that in order to belong, we seem to have this belief that we need to be different. We need to somehow be special. We need to be different for better or worse. And somehow through that difference, we feel we can belong. If I achieve, if I work hard at my job, if I wear the right clothes, if I'm different, distinguished, noticeable, if I'm seen, I belong. And it's a very strange belief, because it's creating a non-belonging already before it began. And it's worth looking into that through the few days, this specialness thing. And it's not always a good thing. It can be specially traumatized, specially formed in any way.
Can I ask what you're saying is ambition.
Yeah.
But when you're born and you have a longing for something, but you're also born with talents. With talents. And you can have this longing inside because this talent wants to come out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not to impress or gain something, because there's a need inside.
Absolutely. That's the longing of the big being, to manifest through the individual form. The shared qualities, which are for a while held in an individual form, the big being, the beloved, is the manifestation through the qualities.
It's always amazing how we want to add the same things. Still, I want...
Sorry.
That's absolutely okay. Still, I want to repeat basically what Georgi said in a slightly different, to kind of When you, again, I am drawn back to the forest. When you look at the forest, and there is all these little plants and big trees, and they all express their own individuality, their individual quality, inseparable from the forest. They have not a question about their individuality, their own form, neither of they belong to the whole. It's both. So we all have our own separate form. But this separate form is expressing itself in the whole, as part of the whole, inseparably. It's not possible to express yourself not in connection with. And this expression, if we are balanced, is based on receptivity, reception of the whole.
Reception. What is reception?
Ontvankelijkheid. So there is this circulation from the whole through each individual, in which what's coming forward from each individual as a need of expression, which is part of the whole again. There is not something as a separate individual achievement.